Hi, hello, and welcome to the Summer School and YouTube channel. If you're listening on Apple Podcast, hello, and welcome to the podcast. If you're interested in talks about education, schools, sometimes things outside of it, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and you might find great content just like what I'm planning on having here today with my guest. It's been about a month since my last video for the channel, and it's been even longer since my last interview. And with everyone that I talk to here, each of them have inspired me in some way, spiritually, mentally, professionally. And with this guest today, she has inspired me in all three ways. I found her in her work when I first enrolled in the teacher schools in 2018. And I valued her insight because she would explore all the questions that were never honestly addressed in any of my classes. Questions like, is there value in detention? How can we nurture student agency? What are the strengths of a teacher-led classroom? Listening to her philosophies helped me to feel less guilty about holding student accountability in such a high regard. She is heralded as, quote, Britain's strictest headmistress. But in my honest opinion, if you're just getting to know her through that one adjective alone, you'd probably only see 5% of all the beautiful contributions she has made to education. She's more than just strict. She's intelligent, she's compassionate, she's forthright, and she's also my special guest for today. She's the headmistress and the co-founder of the Michaela Community School. Please welcome Katharine Birbalsingh. Hello, Katharine. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Nico. That was a very nice introduction. Thank you very much.
No problem. I appreciate you giving the time. So I think any place to start in an interview is your upbringing. I've heard about your upbringing from your documentary, from various other interviews you do. It's pretty nomadic. Nomadic and diverse, I would say, in terms of your experiences. Could you give a short recall for the listeners who are not familiar with you?
Yeah, it's true. So my parents are from the Caribbean. My mum's Jamaican and my father's Guyanese, but he's Indian Guyanese. Well, I was born in New Zealand. My parents were there at the time. And I grew up mainly in Canada. But when I was about 4, we spent a year in Nigeria. And then when I was about 10, we spent a year in France. And then when I was 15, we came to England. And then when my parents went back after a year, they went back to Canada. I stayed on. And I was always meant to go back at some point, but I sort of never did. And I'm still here, over 30 years later.
Was your not just your immediate family, but maybe cousins and relatives moving around with you, or was it just you and your immediate family moving around to different places?
Yeah, just me and my immediate family. My dad was a great traveler.
Yeah.
And so he just used to take us to different places and he loved seeing the world, and that was who he was, really. So
I always wondered about that, especially when I was working with kids, the moving around part. You seem to have come out of it with a deeper appreciation of cultures across continents and countries.
Yeah.
But sometimes it affects students in different ways. Were there moments in your childhood where you're like, oh, I was just getting a rhythm with my peers or with the school?
Well, my father was very clever in that we'd always go back to the same house and to the, so it was, we'd just take a year out and go somewhere and then come back. What you're talking about are kids that have more of a chaotic situation at home, and they're moving from place to place and they don't know when they're going to go next and so on. This was very planned and strategic from my dad's point of view. And as I say, we always went back to the same house. So we had that consistency. And both my mom and dad were together and still are together. So we very much had that family. And I go back to Toronto every Christmas to see my parents and spend Christmas with them. So, you're talking about children who have a more disrupted childhood. Mine was more one which I suppose did help me become the person who I am. When people talk about England, for instance, being really racist. I have the comparisons of various other countries to be able to say, well, how racist is it, and in what ways is it racist? And I have different experiences. Yeah.
And across time too. You didn't just spend time in different countries recently. It's been across your whole life.
Yeah. So I remember in France where, like, the racism thing is an interesting point. In bakeries, and it's not just when I was there 30 odd years ago. It was until, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago in France. You could go to a bakery and buy a Negro's head. In tête de nègre is what it was called. And
Yeah.
the Negro's head was like a little chocolate ball. It was a pastry.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because people always talk about America being so racist or Britain being really racist. Nobody realizes that there are other parts of the world which have their own problems too.
Yeah, I'm going to move to the next question, but since you brought up the Negro's head, I have to ask, was it tasty? Did you eat one? Or did you have to stop yourself?
I had never bought one.
Okay.
So I can't say. No, I don't.
I wouldn't have judged you. I would have been like, there would have been a morbid curiosity. What if it's delicious? Does that make me? Yeah, okay. Well, did you immediately know that you were going to jump into teaching, or did you work jobs in childcare first, tutoring maybe to start, or did you just go full time into teaching?
No, I went into teaching. It's funny, when I was at university, I didn't really know what I was going to do. And I was at Oxford, and they used to have kind of events where McKinsey or some big firm would come and talk to you about the sorts of things you might do there. And I went along to one of these meetings and came out thinking, there is no way that I can do that with my life. And I was really unsure. And I got involved in this organization that used to send kids into the inner cities of London or Birmingham, Manchester, to talk to them about possibly applying to Oxford or Cambridge, that they wouldn't normally think about applying. Now, and it was very much a kind of put a black student from Oxford into the inner city to say, look, I did it. I'm at Oxford. I'm surviving and doing well. You can do it too. And don't think that people who look like you don't go to Oxford. That's not true. And so I did that and found that I really changed their minds. At the beginning, I would talk and they will be saying, oh, what is this? I don't want to go to Oxford. Da, da, da. And then I would do it and they'd change their minds and they'd apply. And I thought, wow, I can really make a difference here. And I decided to become a teacher. And then, some many years later, I was at an event where I was trying to encourage people to go into teaching. And I was talking to a group of people who were potential teachers. And I told the story about how I talked to the kids, and that's how I got in, when I was at Oxford, blah, blah. And afterwards I went out, and this woman came up to me, a young woman came up to me, and she said, you know what? I was one of those kids in one of those schools where you came to speak. And I said, so what happened? And she said, well, I applied to Oxford and I got in and I did my degree. And then I said, and then what happened? And she said, and then I went into banking, and I've been working in banking in the city. But now I've decided I don't like it anymore, and I'd like to become a teacher. And that was just love. It was a real. The thing about life is that you never know what things you do will have impact on other people, and how there's like this ripple effect. They say about a butterfly flapping its wings and causes a typhoon somewhere else, or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. And that's why we've always got to be careful about the things that we say and the things that we do, because you never know the impact that that's going to have on other people and on the world.
And I was not expecting to talk to you about this, but I'm interested in your take, because you talked about, having an effect on those kids that you visited in the inner city. And I've always wondered, what is the exact value of representation? I would believe that you went there. Yes, you can't change your external appearance, but you went there with a spirit that resonated with those students.
Yeah.
Am I naive to believe that if you came through saying exactly what you said with the resolve behind it, and you were white, would it have resonated with those kids the same?
Yeah, it's a good question. So people will, it's an interesting discussion because people will say things like, well, you know, if you don't have lots of Black teachers in your school, for instance, how can you actually connect with Black kids, etc. And I've done surveys over my time in teaching with various different kids at different schools,
Yes.
where I've asked the ethnic minority kids, what matters to you? Do you care about the gender of the teacher? Do you care about the race of the teacher, etc.? And various questions. And what's always come out is that kids always say they don't care whether they're male or female. They don't care whether the teacher is Black or white. What they care about is having a good teacher. Um, and I think that's absolutely true. And I don't think it matters about the teachers. However, when it comes to people who I might have into my school to talk about their careers and so on, I mean, I have a variety of people of all different races and religions and all sorts. But it's true that I will make an effort to try and find more ethnic minorities. I say more, some ethnic minority speakers. Because I want the kids, because the vast majority of my kids are ethnic minority, I want the kids to be able to see themselves reflected in roles in various different jobs. And so I do think there's something in it. I do think that me going into those schools and being the color that I am and so on made a difference. Had I been white, I think they might have also listened. I'm not saying they wouldn't have listened, but I do think that it brought something extra. And if it's the case that brown and Black children never see brown and Black people in positions of authority or positions of power of some sort, or that they're doctors or lawyers or whatever it is that they might want to go on to do, I do think that they can find it more difficult to see themselves in that role if they never see it,
Yeah.
So it's a difficult one. It's not, I don't think it's obvious, the answer. And unfortunately, the way this argument goes is that people either say race doesn't matter at all, and you're racist to even mention it, or they say it's all about race, and unless you have ethnic minority teachers teaching these ethnic minority kids, they're all going to fail.
Yeah.
It really is. There's a nuanced position in the middle, and I try and take that into account when I'm thinking about who to get into my school. If I meet a Black banker, I'm like, come in, you got to come in right now.
Yeah.
So. But that doesn't mean that if I meet a white dentist that I say you can't come into my school.
And that's strictly because you're a dentist. No one likes going to the dentist. Yeah, no. I'm kind of on board of that. I value it, but I think there's, at least at an institutional level here with the schools in America, there's an overvaluing of it where
I agree.
if you have it where the demographics of a school is as perfectly symmetrical across the board, that is evidence of a thriving school. And I always tell people, like, if it was 50% male and 50% female, I just checked, I believe there's only 11% of male educators in America for elementary schools. So I'm already in the disparity because I'm Black and Filipino and I'm a man.
Yes.
But I never complained about it because even if it was 50-50, there's still a laundry list of things that the school can improve on.
Well, like you say, the 50-50 thing is ridiculous. I mean,
Yeah.
So this idea of quotas is absurd. That's them taking it to an extreme. And they also then think, unless it is 50-50, then obviously the school is doing a terrible job. That's just ridiculous. And the idea that you can't learn from a teacher who's a different color from you, well, then you're in big trouble if that's the case. That's absurd. But I do think there is something to kids being able to see themselves represented in different places. There's something in that.
There is. So in your time teaching, I'm curious about, did you ever have, I guess, ideological conflicts with your administrators or the school district? Because you always, when you talk to people, you mostly talk about the detractors from the political side outside of the school.
Mm-hmm.
But were there colleagues of yours that were just like, I don't understand why you would do that in your class? That's not really useful to teaching. What kind of method is that? Are you sure you want to do that? Not in a disparaging, like you're not going to achieve anything, but they just didn't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So in the day when progressive teaching methods were all the rage, any of us who were traditional were regularly criticized for that. You're talking too long up at the front of the classroom. I mean, I myself would tell people that they were talking too long. So when we knew that the inspectors might be coming in, I'd be advising everybody, never stand in front of your class for more than 5 minutes talking, because that means you're teaching them, and that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Marked down for teaching the kids. So it wasn't just people telling me, I was telling other people, because you had to, in order to survive, you had to do well in your inspection. You had to do well in the observations that senior team might do for you. But so what you tend to do is you would just put on a performance. You knew somebody was coming in to observe you, so you would just pretend and teach progressively for that lesson, and then off they go, and then you'd go back to your old way of doing things.
The pony show.
Well, I remember once having an Ofsted inspector at the back of my room, and I was teaching in this ridiculous progressive way. And one of the boys at the front of the class grabbed his desk and he said, "Miss, what is going on? Why don't you just teach us?" And he was so annoyed. And I was going, we're just going to try this different thing. It's called progressivism. We're not going to learn anything at the end of it, but hey, at least we'll have ticked the box for the person who's in the room. So, it's that's how it was. But it was also the case that I was also a bit outspoken, as you can imagine. So I would always be going up to my principals and saying to them, "Do you realize that we have a child who's about to leave us? He's finishing his high school, and he doesn't know what the Holocaust is. How can it be that he doesn't know what the Holocaust is?" And then my principal would say something like, "Oh, come on, Catherine. He's in the bottom set. I mean, come on." And I'd say, "I don't care if he's in the bottom set. How can he not know what the Holocaust is? This is crazy. We are obviously failing this child." That's the kind of thing that would happen. I was always just bringing up something where I'd say, "This is outrageous." And often my principals would get very annoyed with me, but in a nice and friendly way. I wasn't horrible to them. I'd always talk about this behind closed doors. And then what they'd say, "Okay, Catherine, you sort it out. You think behavior is bad? There you go. Behavior is now yours. You go sort it out." And then I'd go around the school and I'd sort it out, and things would improve. And then I'd find something else to say. "Oh my goodness, this is wrong." And then the principal would say, "Oh, you sort it out." So that was my career, really.
Yeah. So was there did you learn anything from moves made by the administration that you're like, "I am not going to do that," or "I will do that"? Like, that's something to keep when it's time for me to be in the position I'm currently in.
No, I was always annoying in that I'd go to my principal to say, "This is wrong." I'd always do it in a polite fashion. I'd always do it behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And I did very much believe in the idea that this is my principal's school. And if I want to work here, then I have to either convince him that what I'm suggesting is the right way, or I just have to toe the line. Yeah. So I didn't refuse to do things. I wouldn't stop. I would always do as I was told, but I was also very persuasive. So most of the time I would convince my principals. And the reason why I'd convince them was because they would see the results in my classroom. They would see that they knew I was a good member of staff. They could always count on me. I never took a day off. I was never late. I loved the kids. I was always working till in the evenings, they knew that about me. So when I go to them and say, "Look, we've got this wrong. We need to do this differently," they'd give me a chance to kind of and I would always be the one saying, "I'll do it. I'll put in the extra work. Just give it to me. Give me the responsibility and I'll fix it." So I always, all my head teachers, I'm, generally speaking, I'm in touch with them, still, I've been friendly with them, it has been a difficult relationship.
Yeah. I understand the importance of I would just have conversations with my principal for the sake of working through an idea, not necessarily to disagree with them. But was there when did you know that you wanted to start your own program and like you couldn't operate within that current system? Was it gradual or instantaneous?
it wasn't. It wasn't out of choice. I mean, what happened was, I was a normal teacher. Then I moved up through the ranks, and I was a deputy head. So a deputy principal. And I used to write a blog called "To Miss with Love," like the book and film "To Sir with Love," with Sidney Poitier. And I'd write on it 3 days a week, maybe, and I'd write a little story about how little Johnny got his money stolen and how the system was broken and blah, blah. And various people were reading this. And my publisher knew the education secretary and said that I should go and talk to him about what was wrong with the system. So I went and talked to him about what was wrong with the system. He said, really great if you came and spoke at our conference. This was the Conservative Party conference.
Yes.
I didn't really know much about politics. I was a bit naive then. This was in the day before social media. There was no Twitter. There was Facebook, I suppose, but it was like
it wasn't as politically charged as it is today.
Nobody talked. Like, if you wanted to talk discuss a blog, you had to go on the blog and write comments on the blog. That's how it worked then.
Yeah.
So in any case, I decided in the end that I would go into this conference and I would give a little speech of 5 minutes. And if you type it into YouTube now, Katharine Birbalsingh, Conservative Party speech, you'll see it. The thing is that it changed my life. So I went there and gave this speech, and the audience gave me a standing ovation. And at that point, the press turned towards me, and my whole life changed. I was asked to stay at home from school after that. In the end, I had to resign because it just became untenable for me to stay at that school. I was told I would never work in the public school system ever again, essentially because I'd spoken at the Conservative Party conference. Now, other people will say otherwise. They'll say it wasn't because of that. I'm certain that had I gone to one of the teachers' unions meetings and given that same speech, it would have been fine. In any case, the only way then that I could get back to working in the inner city with the kids that I love, disadvantaged kids, was to set up my own school. So I set up Michaela. It took us 3.5 years. I had a number of detractors who were trying to stop us. We would have meetings with families, and detractors would come in and sit amongst the families so that when we would talk to the families about what we were offering, they would stand up and start shouting in order to drown us out so that the families couldn't hear what we were saying. Yeah. And it was again, another race thing, actually. It was fascinating because all the people who were standing up and trying to shout us down were white. All the families were brown and black in the inner city, desperate for another option of school. And here were all these white middle class people trying to stop them from having another option of school. Yeah. So we moved from borough to borough trying to open. Eventually, we managed 3.5 years later to open up Michaela and Brent near Wembley, where we are. But it was a real fight. It still is the case that we have a lot of detractors. Even when we first opened, we had people protesting outside, giving leaflets to our kids saying that they were in physical danger in the building. It's been really tough. But the school, it moves from strength to strength. We're full. We have nearly 800 kids. Kids go off to Oxford and Cambridge and the top universities in Britain. We are doing really, really well. We get 600 visitors every year, mainly teachers from around the world who come here to take ideas and take back to their schools and make things better. So, we've done a good thing, and I'm really proud of that.
So I wanted to I listened to the talk that you gave at the Center for Independent Studies. Oh, yeah. And I thought your quote was wonderful. Let me make sure I got it right. You said, in regards to your successful test scores, you said, results aren't the only thing that matter, but they do matter. However, the thing I am most proud of in our school are the children and who they are. And yeah. I am of a similar stance where it's just everyone is quick to say, we need to stop testing, stop all assessments. It's too much anxiety for the kids. And I will hold my hand up and say, yes, testing is extremely boring and it gives you a limited picture of the child. But I like having access to that data and just seeing it. I think that, at least in America, we hunt data with a fiendishness that is just, it's too guttural almost, like at all costs. For example, for when schools closed down initially in that first year, throughout the whole year, we kept telling kids, we're not coming in, we can't come in, we can't be in person, all of this stuff. And I was teaching in my first year distance learning, so I was only on Zoom that whole first year teaching. And then when it came time for testing, I wasn't allowed to tell the parents that they could opt out. But also, they just said, okay, now that we're going to have testing, we're all going to have it at this one location. All the students from across the district just show up here for 4 hours. And that to me was just like, wait, you just made this rule. Sure, you can disagree with the rule, but you made that rule. And the fact that you're throwing it away for numbers, that was weird to me. So I guess my question to you with, data and valuing it, I'm curious, how would you feel about the school if your test results were at 8th place or 8th to 10th place and the kids were just as happy?
I'd be fine.
That'd be fine, right? Okay. I know that was a long setup. I was just curious because.
Okay, so we got the top progress score in the country this year, but I don't know, next year we could be 8th or 10th. Yeah. I'd be upset if we were 200th because that means we really aren't, there's something we're not doing as well as we could in terms of the teaching quality and our expectations of the kids. But no, if we're in the top 20, then that's great. There are a whole variety of different things that can put you in, first, second, third. It's not a perfect science, this business tracking progress and so on. So, that doesn't matter to me. I just, you want to be near the top, but and the reason why you want to be near the top is you want to do the best by your kids. What I always say to the kids is, look, I've given you the best possible teachers, best possible classrooms. You've got brilliant discipline. We've got high expectations. You've got brilliant homework. I can sleep well at night. If you don't do the work that's required, then that's on you, right? It's not on me because I've done my job. Are you doing yours? And that's the key thing. And if we came 200th, then that would probably tell me that I hadn't done my job so well. One of our year 11s who just left us, who just took all these exams and really, we did really well. When they, on their last day, and I was giving them final assembly, they had brought in all of these presents and cards and things for their teachers. And I said to them, I look at all of these presents here that you're giving to your teachers, and it makes me so proud. It makes me proud of you, but it makes me proud of myself. And you know why? Because I know I did my job, right? Yeah. Because these are the kinds of people they are, right? And I've done my job. So and it's really not just about results, and I say they do matter, yes. Yeah. But what also matters just as much is who they are as people. And if they weren't doing that, then I would feel like I hadn't done my job. And I'm proud of my job, and I'm proud of being able to do it well. And so all of these things matter when I'm making a judgment of myself to decide, have I met the standards that I hold for myself, Yeah. And that comes partly through national results, but also through the kinds of people who they are. And you, of course, Nika, you're very welcome to come visit us here.
Absolutely.
Your listeners are too. People sign up on the website from all over the world and they come and visit us and they see the kids and they meet them and they talk about how lovely the kids are,
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for the invitation, and I was already planning on, non-negotiable, I will be visiting. I want to get these last 2 questions. I want to honor your time schedule. So in those adjectives that I gave of you at the beginning, I was thinking of calling you innovative, and I was like, no, and this is a compliment. I was like, no, I think the strength of her program is in its simplicity. I think focusing on new is actually not what she's trying to do. She's trying to focus on the foundation of what education should be. And, that's enforcing rules, encouraging discipline for the kids. But the one that I wanted to talk about was just engaging the families. I loved in the documentary, and I do it in my own practice of prioritizing speaking to the parents. I'm curious, have you had interactions with parents who are not purposely undoing all the work that you do in school? Like if I'm trying to, where it's just like, oh, this kid is having a really hard time. They're trying, I can see it, but you are really weighing it down.
All the time. We're in the city, so we have a challenging intake. There are kids who have to apologize for their parents. I mean, we don't make them. They feel they want to apologize for their parents. Parents screaming and shouting, attacking the staff, all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean,
in the documentary, it was these receptive parents. I'm like, I know there's those parents that are just
exactly. No, they can be some very difficult parents, and obviously some very difficult kids as well. I mean, a variety. But the thing is that what I always say to educators is that if you can't get through to the parents, you need to try and get through to the child. You need the child to understand that you're on their side and that you love them. And that's why in the end, the child may end up apologizing for their parents, because they know how much they loved at school. They know that when they come to school, that's their place of safety and security. They come to school to find order and structure and a sense of predictability, where they know the people around them who love them will look after them, and they don't have that at home. And it's one of the things I'm constantly trying to stress to educators, to say, look, you think you're doing them a favor by having things be relatively, chaotic at school. The kids who most appreciate that order and structure are the ones who come from more chaotic homes. So you're not helping them. And, us simply having order and structure in our school gets me the name of strictest headmistress in Britain. People have this idea that I might be walking down the corridors with whips and chains. I mean, obviously not the case. We love the kids. And when you hold your standards high for the discipline, that's when you're able to build the most wonderful relationships with them, because you're not telling them off for talking all the time and silence. None of that's happening here. They're all just getting on with it quickly and loving life and loving learning. Now, all it means when you're strict is that you have a system of discipline. You have merits, you have demerits, that they understand praise and punishment, and they know that you will always follow through. And we're all consistent in the way that we approach things. That's what parents should do at home, and even if you're split as parents, approach the child in the same way. Always have the same bedtime. Always have the same expectations. Homework needs to be done at 6 o'clock. Well, in both houses, it needs to be done at 6 o'clock. That consistency is like gold to a child,
Yeah, they need it.
And too often, kids don't get it at home, and then they come to school and they don't get it at school either.
Did you have a helicopter parent? Do you deal with helicopter parents who tell, how dare the teacher do this? I believe that you should be doing this for the child, or were they just inserting themselves into the classroom?
No, I don't think
no. Okay, I was wondering.
We are in the inner city.
Yeah.
So no, we don't tend to have that. I mean, look, they tell you when they want their mobile phone back because we've confiscated it.
Yes.
They tell you don't give my child a detention and stuff. Yeah, that sort of thing.
Okay, yeah, there.
But they're not telling you how to teach or anything like that.
That was just, yeah. Okay, last question then. I hope you've had fun with this interview, by the way. I've had a great time. Okay, cool. So Michaela started 2014. You're coming up on 10 years. I'm curious, where would you like to see Michaela at the 15-year anniversary mark?
Well, we're trying to grow the sixth form, because we take in some external kids when it comes to the sixth form, so the kids at the top of the school, like going off to university. That would be nice to do. We are where we want to be. I mean, the school is doing really well and we enjoy it. I do love my job. I love coming in every morning. I meet with my senior team at 7 a.m. and we talk about the issues, whatever it is we're trying to sort in the school. I do love the kids. I love the staff. So I could happily go on with this as it is. One of the other things that I think is hugely problematic in schools is that people don't stick around. Principals are there for 2 or 3 years, and then off they go to somewhere else. That consistency is so important to kids. And I do think we have a larger role to play in the whole education debate. It's not just about our school. It's about what we're showing others in terms of what's possible. We demonstrate what real excellence looks like. And I'm proud of that. And I'm proud to play a part in the kind of revolution that I feel is going on in education, where we're trying to get things back to a more traditional outlook, where we have traditional values, where we believe that the teacher should be the authority in the room, leading the learning, and where we believe in traditional discipline.
Yes. Well, I thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. And I totally agree. Even when I was watching the documentary with my girlfriend, we were just watching you. And the main thing we can say, looking at how you conducted yourself, was she's happy. She's happy. Like when you say you're fulfilled, I believe it. And is there anything else you want to plug before you go?
Well, there's the documentary, as you said, Britain's Strictest Headmistress, I think it's called. And you go on strictestheadmistress.com. The producer of the documentary, she has a website, and they can watch it there. And I think it's a great way of really seeing what the school is like.
I agree.
And then I'm on Twitter, Miss_Snuffy. It's Miss Snuffy because named after Mr. Snuffleupagus on Sesame Street. When I set up my blog, I became Miss Snuffleupagus because the big elephant in the room you can't see. And then over the time, I became Miss Snuffy, and I kept that for Twitter. So now I have to explain why it is I'm Miss Snuffy, but there you go.
It's okay. Yeah. Well, thank you very much again, Katharine, and I'll look forward to when I visit Michaela.
Yes.
And yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank
Take
you for
care.
having me. All right.
Yes.